Right, so this week I was supposed to be changing the chain and sprocket set on the T100. I did get a new chain breaker and riveter and I thought I was all ready to go, and then when I checked the Haynes manual just to read through the procedure, I realised that my torque wrench doesn't work up to the values required for this job. One has been ordered, it's on its way. Hopefully the next episode, episode 8, will be third time lucky and we'll actually be able to get on with that job. Having said that, I do think that this is a fairly common thing for anyone customising or restoring a bike. And it is something to bear in mind that it's not just the part for the bikes that you have to pay for. You often find that you're actually spending quite a bit of money on new tools or specialist tools that you require for certain tasks on the bike. So this week what I decided to do was get a couple of things out of the way. One is a battery saving harness for the front light on this bike because it has been causing me some problems during filming, and this battery saver harness will be a godsend, and I'll get into that a little bit more later on. But first of all, the top caps on those fake carburetors. This is one of those jobs that I haven't been looking forward to because I hate removing the tank from the bike. It's not a difficult job, it's just a bit fiddly and you're trying to balance that shiny expensive tank sort of on your knee or under your arm while you're doing it. Again, this is to facilitate the fitting of an old favourite with Motone Customs CNC machined alloy carb covers. The ones that I'm going to fit to this bike are the anodised black ribbed version. They're sold as a pair but they come boxed individually. As you would expect from Motone, they're very high quality and the anodising has been done to an exceptionally high standard. They come complete with a set of 4 stainless steel Allen bolts. The main reason for removing the tank is that the 2 bolts on the inside near to the spine of the frame aren't really accessible because the tank's in the way. I did have a go at them with my King Dick stubby, but because you can only get the tips of your fingers in there, I just couldn't get enough purchase on the screwdriver to actually break the seal on the Loctite that holds them in. So the best way to deal with this is just to take the tank off. Now these Motone Custom carb tops have been highlighted along those ribs by turning them down on a lathe to remove the black anodising and revealing the natural alloy underneath. The conundrum that I had is that these carb tops are sort of universal. They'll fit on in any direction, so that you can either have them with the ribs running from the front to the rear of the bike or running along the left hand side to the right hand side of the bike, and I wasn't really sure which way to put them on. I did have a quick look online but couldn't find any pictures that really helped me out with this. My head told me that they should sort of line up with the cooling fins on the engine so that they should run from front to back, but my heart was telling me that for the best effect to really show them off they should run from left to right. And in the end I went with my head on this one. Now I'm not really sure whether that was the right choice. I actually had the tank and everything refitted before I sort of stopped myself and wondered whether I'd done the right thing. And I'm not really sure that it shows them off to the best. It would be interesting to hear other people's opinions on this, because it's only a 10 or 15 minute job just to whip the tank off and turn them round. But for now I've left them as they were. Either way, these look really nice. These throttle bodies did look a little bit too samey with it all being just different textures of silver. And those black caps I think make a really big difference. And it's one of those things that your average bystander probably isn't going to notice. It's an accent part that works to help create an overall image. They do key in really nicely with the black and silver of the engine, something that shows attention to detail. Right, to cater for all markets, Triumph wired the headlamp up to the ignition so that if the ignition's switched on, the low beam is permanently illuminated. And I think this is to cater for all the overseas markets that the bike's exported to. Now, the only problem with this is that the minute you turn your ignition switch on, the headlamp is instantly starting to drain what is a small battery, and depending on the circumstances this can have an adverse effect on starting the bike up. Now I've had a problem with this a couple of times, more notably when I was at the Humber Bridge filming a few weeks ago. Quite often I'm starting the bike up repeatedly for the purposes of filming without actually riding any great distance, no more than a few yards. And I remember noticing at the end of that shoot that the battery was really labouring to turn the engine over. So Motone sent me through this battery saver harness, which is actually quite an ingenious little piece of kit, and it only takes a couple of minutes to fit. It consists of the appropriate wiring harness with a male H4 plug and a female H4 socket at one end, and a socket at the other end designed to accept a relay that comes with the kit. Now the purpose of the relay is to disconnect the main beam from the ignition so that you can switch the ignition on without the light coming on, but it doesn't affect the small pilot bulb which still comes on automatically when you switch the ignition on. It's easy to fit, and the first thing you have to do is actually get inside the headlamp. I actually took the headlamp apart because I wanted to clean everything, and it's a myriad of different sized crosshead screws, and this is where the King Dick 1-for-6 screwdriver comes in handy. Now one thing I also wanted to do was replace the headlamp bulb. The bike still had the original H4 that it came with, which is just a cheap nondescript Phillips item. And when I got the T120 I actually bought a pair of Osram night breakers, so I decided to put the spare one that I had in the T100. This is actually a blue bulb which has a colour temperature of around about 6,500 degrees Kelvin. So to the human eye it gives off about 30% more light than the original yellow bulbs that come with the bike. Not essential unless you do a lot of nighttime riding, but I had one spare so I thought I may as well use it. Now once you've got your bulb in place, the female H4 socket on the wiring harness plugs into the H4 bulb. The male H4 socket on the wiring harness plugs into the wiring harness on the actual bike itself, the part that would normally fit directly to the bulb. And at the other end you just plug the relay into the socket. Now this harness does look quite bulky, but in actual fact I found it fitted inside the headlamp shell really easily. I didn't take a lot of time to arrange it as I probably would normally do, the reason being that the intention is to replace this headlamp in the next few weeks. But even so, everything fitted together really easy. So once you've got it installed, this is how it works. You switch your ignition on and the pilot light will come on, but the 55-watt low beam will not illuminate. If you want your low beam on, you simply flick your light switch to main beam and then back to low beam, and the low beam will come on. The bike will then remain in its factory state with the low beam illuminated for as long as the ignition's switched on, and it will all reset itself when you turn the ignition off. And it's as simple as that. Now even in countries where it's mandatory that you have your low beam running, at least this gives you the choice of when you have your low beam on and when you don't. And it's certainly going to save a lot of wear and tear on your battery in the long run. If you live in a country where it's not mandatory to have your low beam on and you don't want it on, you don't have to have it on. I know this is a utility accessory and it might not appeal to everyone, but it is an insurance policy that could mean the difference between you being stranded with a bike that won't start and being able to set off and continue to ride. Now that's about it for this week. I hope that you've enjoyed this video and that you found it useful. I'll leave a link in the video description for these two products from Motone. If you have enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. So until Friday, ride safe and I'll see you soon.